Hi everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Sean's Movie Crusades. My name's Sean Wasserkrug, and I'm basically here to review the latest movies that just came out in theaters, as well as fan request movie reviews, and the occasional old school throwbacks, and much more. Today's episode basically is going to be about the picture you see behind me, the review for the latest Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, The Crimes of Grindelwald. Before this review starts, if you like what the video brings and you want to see more from me, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button, and I'll bring you more down the pike. Now, basically, Fantastic Beasts Where to Find Them is obviously the prequel series to the Harry Potter franchise. It takes place around the 1920s compared to Harry Potter being more in like the 1990s. A lot of people didn't really like the first one that much, or they were just kind of like okay with it. I actually personally really liked it. I really liked the heart of the film from the core four characters of Newt, played by Eddie Redmayne, Queenie, played by Alison Sudol, Dan Fogler, who played Jacob, and Catherine Waterston, who played Tina. I really liked how they interject with one another, mainly Dan Fogler as Jacob. It just felt sweet. I mean, it did have those dark undertones with, Colin Farrell's character, who later ended up being Grindelwald, played by Johnny Depp. But I was really excited when this one was coming out because I just liked the way the series was going. I like how they were going to be introducing a young Dumbledore, played by Jude Law, and just more into these characters and not more about, hey, let's find these beasts. We saw that there's more of a grounded story to it, which is going to basically be this story of Dumbledore and Grindelwald. And the first film was just more of an introduction of some characters, maybe not the main focal point characters of the film, but basically the ones that were going to lead us down the path of where this film franchise was going to go. And it's kind of starting here in The Crimes of Grindelwald. I mean, you do have your main core four from the first film in it. And while the film does follow them, they're not really the main point of the movie, and that does kind of tend to hurt the film in a way. But let's dive right into this, see how I felt about it, see so you guys know what you're kind of coming into with it being released today. Basically, the overall plot of The Crimes of Grindelwald, and you can see it in the trailers, so this really isn't much of a spoiler, is basically Grindelwald escapes from his prison, and he's basically trying to get all the other wizards to kind of take up wands and basically take down and merge the wizarding world with the muggle world so they can overthrow them and take over them and basically become the true rulers of the world. Basically, the only person that stands in Grindelwald's way is Dumbledore, and so basically he is trying to find Credence, who was thought to be dead at the end of the first film, who's still very much alive, played by Ezra Miller. Basically, he's looking to find him because he feels like he's the only one that has the ability to stop Dumbledore, as Grindelwald isn't able to do that. So on the other side of things, you have Dumbledore, who once again can't really bring himself to the reasoning of trying to stop Grindelwald, and that gets explained in the movie without going too far into spoilers. Goes and recruits Newt, who's one of his favorite students or past students, to basically try and find Credence first before Grindelwald does. And then you also have the third party of the Ministry of Magic, who are also trying to hunt down Credence. So basically it's kind of a race to see who can get to Credence first. And that's basically the overall story going into this, and kind of where everyone kind of connects and lies into the film. The main story point of it is kind of the mystery of Credence. It's basically who is he? We don't really know a whole lot about him. We knew he was this orphan kid from the first film who had very strong magical powers, but because he was repressing it, he basically kind of lashed out and became this gigantic monster, and I'm blanking on the name right now. But basically, they had to stop him. And while they thought they destroyed him, a little piece of him got away, and you saw that at the end of the first film, and he's still alive, and everyone's still kind of looking for him. And this movie kind of takes place, give or take, about 9 months after the first film. So there's been some elapsed time, and there's been character movement. Newt's still being punished by the Ministry for what happened in New York in the first film. He hasn't seen the rest of his friends, so Newt, Jacob, Queenie. He hasn't seen them since the first film. And Credence is in Paris in this film, and he's got a new friend, as many of you would know, named Nagini. who ends up becoming the snake ally to Voldemort in the Harry Potter franchise. But basically, I mean, there's a lot of story drawn out and a lot of story built in for Credence to really kind of break through as a character. Problem is that Ezra Miller doesn't really do a whole lot with it. He's kind of playing the same Credence character he played in the first one. He's just kind of mopey and sad and whiny. You know, he's trying to find his biological mother so he can find out, you know, who he is as a person. But even though there's so much story that's there that they could really dive into and give us, he doesn't really do a lot with the character. And sadly, that's kind of what the main problem is for a lot of the movie, is that a lot of the characters that we've grown to know and potentially love from the first film is kind of stagnant. They don't really do much. They don't really grow like they did in the first film. And with 2 movies in, that's kind of a negative when it comes to the film, is we really don't have a whole lot of character development from these actors from the first film to the second. Ezra Miller's still just a moody teenager who doesn't really know his place. Newt is still kind of towing that line, whether he wants to be a part of the fight, whether he just wants to fool around with his beasts. Tina is still, you know, will she be with Newt? Won't she be with Newt? I'm going to be upset with Newt, and then, you know, fall for him or not fall for him, you know, just like pick a side and just go. Jacob's still kind of that muggle who fumbles around, you know, for comic relief, even though he's not really that funny in this. I mean, he has his slight moments, but compared to the first film, he's, you know, kind of dumbed down. But he does get some more kind of dramatic parts in the film, which is nice, but still, it's just not a whole lot new compared to his character. And honestly, the only one that really gets any kind of development or furtherment in their character is Queenie, but even then, she doesn't get a whole lot of screen time, and the problem with that is that there's a big development in her character towards the end of the film, which is huge, and I'm intrigued by it, and I'm excited to see where they go with it in the future films, but it also doesn't feel earned. I mean, if they just would have given us more screen time or allowed us to get more scenes with her to do that, it would feel like it was more earned, and definitely would have had a lot more weight to the character when this big situation in her character actually happens. But basically, the positives, for the most part, of the film, Jude Law does great as Dumbledore. He's incredibly charming. He's a lot of humor in the movie. He's only in like 3 or 4 scenes, but they're meaty scenes, so it's not like he's barely in it. It's just that he's not the focal point of the story. He's the introduction to his character that we're going to get a lot more of through the future movies, which apparently there's 3 more after this one. The big negative, I guess, I would give to Jude Law's character is that as charming and as funny and cool and laid back as he is in this movie, he doesn't feel like the Harry Potter Dumbledore that we know and love. I mean, there's like instances of him being there, but he's not at that point yet where, I mean, he's not the Richard Harris Dumbledore from the first few films. He's more like the Dumbledore from the later films after Richard Harris passed away. He's just way too chill for what's going on, and it's just like maybe he'll get to that point from the Dumbledore that we know from the Potter franchise in the later films, but right now he's just not there, so it kind of feels off. But he's still enjoyable to watch, and his scenes are some of the highlights of the movie. Johnny Depp. I know a lot of people were kind of negative towards him when it came to him being cast in this role, but he kills it. He's great in this movie. He's captivating. He controls the screen. Every single scene he's in is probably the best in the movie. He's got the best action scenes in the movie. There's not really a whole lot of action in the movie. There's maybe like 3 scenes total. He's got a great introduction in the beginning of the movie. He's got a great end climax in the end of the film. But every time he's on screen, he's just dominating every scene he's in. He's not going overblown. He's not overacting. He's not doing the Jack Sparrow where he's just kind of, overacting the whole way through. He's very somber. He's very calm, and it's a really captivating character because unlike Voldemort, who uses fear to get his followers, Grindelwald's more kind of like a politician. He's smooth talking with his delivery. He's not. I mean, he does do horrible things. So let's get that out of the way. He's a bad person, and he does some pretty awful things in the first 15 minutes of the movie, but after that, he's kind of a relatively nice guy for his character. I mean, there's times where he could have gone full-blown bad, but he just doesn't. He's a real, just smooth talker, and that's how he gets people to follow him. Even certain characters that we would think who would never follow Grindelwald end up following him, and when they do, it's not like you're angry. I mean, you know, like, oh, he's the bad guy, so that's wrong. But if you pull back, you're like, you know what? It's not against the realm of reality that you would follow him. It makes sense. It's kind of like with the two best villains out of this year in Marvel, like Killmonger and Thanos. It's like, you understand what they're doing, you get why they're doing it. They're just going about it the wrong way, but you understand why they're going through it. And Grindelwald's kind of the same way. You understand why he's doing what he's doing. It makes sense to him and to others why they're doing this. It's just, you know, I mean, you know he's a bad guy because obviously Dumbledore is going against him, so naturally evil. But in terms for people who don't know the story, Grindelwald, I mean, besides just looking scary, because obviously he's got the messed up eye, and he's pale, and he's got the spiked up blonde hair, he relatively is a rather convincing guy, and Johnny Depp does a great job at it. And the other standout would be Zoe Kravitz, who plays Lita Lestrange. She doesn't have a whole lot to do in the movie, but when she is in the movie and she does get her chance, she really does shine. She's playing, like I said, she's playing Lita Lestrange, and she's basically the fiance to Newt's brother, Theseus. I know I'm saying that name wrong. It sounds like it's Thesis. It could be Thesis, but we're just going to go with that. She's engaged to him, and if you remember from the first film, she's kind of the long-lost love of Newt. I mean, Newt's in love with her, at least until he meets Tina. And you can see that in her performance. You can see the love she has for both Theseus and Newt in the movie. But she also has a real dark mystery and a big dark secret that has been kind of held over her since childhood. And you can see that kind of tug and pull of her character between trying to do the right thing and then trying to hide her secrets so no one finds out. And Zoe Kravitz does a really good job of balancing that act between them. And when she does get her moments to shine in the movie, she really does take it and has some great moments in the film. And I would say with those three being Jude Law, Johnny Depp, and Zoe Kravitz, they're pretty much the highlights of the movie. Not saying that, you know, Eddie Redmayne or the rest of the core four from the original film are bad in this movie. They're all good. There's no real bad performance except for maybe Ezra Miller as Credence. They're all doing a good job. It's just they're just not bringing anything new to their characters that they didn't already do in the first film, except for maybe Alison Sudol as Queenie. The Fantastic Beasts, obviously, they're not a focal point in this movie because that was just kind of an introduction to the series. We do get some of the beasts in the movie. I mean, we get the fan favorites, the Nifflers, who are great and hilarious in every scene they're in. They actually get a lot more in this movie than they do in the first one. And, of course, you get Newt's little twig friend, Pickett. He's got his little moments. He's not as big of a focal point as he was in the first film, but he's still there. And then the big kind of introduction is the newcomer, and I'm going to butcher this name. It's called a Zubu, which is basically that big kind of feline, like lion cat that's like the size of an elephant. He's got a multicolored ruffled tail. He's got a few big scenes so he's kind of like the big new beast in the film. I mean, there's other ones that are introduced, but they're just kind of given like a little like nod, like, oh yeah, Newt still has a suitcase. There's still creatures in there. He goes down there at one point. You get to see them all for brief moments. There's a cool water horse that gets about a good minute of screen time. That's a real cool looking creature, but nothing really comes of that creature. It's just kind of a cool visual, which the visuals are great in the movie. They all look good. It's just the main problem with the film is the plot is overly bloated. There's just way too many plot points going on in the movie. I mean, pretty much every new scene feels like a new plot instead of building on the plots that we already have, which can feel kind of jumbled. I mean, there are a ton of Easter eggs in the movie for Harry Potter fans. I mean, there's a few that even I was like, oh, that's blank blank from this, or that's this person from that film that they mentioned once in a previous Potter film. But even for the hardcore Potter fans, it can be a little overwhelming sometimes with the bloated plot and even some of the dialogue. I mean, I'm not saying I'm a die-hard Potter fan, but I do know my Harry Potter lore, and I do have all the movies, and I've watched them plenty of times. But there were certain times when I was watching the movie where I was like, I don't know quite for sure if I'm following what's happening. I think I do, but I'm not 100%. And which, for someone who knows Harry Potter, that can be kind of frustrating. Now, I mean, unless you're one of those Potterheads that has the whole books memorized and reads Pottermore on the internet, stuff like that, I mean, you guys will probably follow it relatively smoothly. But for the non-Potter fanatics or people who are just casual viewers, they're gonna get lost in a lot of this because it's a very bloated plot. And because of that, and because there's not a whole lot of action, it can also be quite boring at points. I mean, it's kind of a slog to get through. I mean, while watching the movie, I didn't really feel bored while going through it. I was just kind of just chilled and calm while watching it. But then after the movie ended, I was like, man, that was kind of boring. There wasn't really a whole lot going on because it feels like this movie is a lot of just moving chess pieces to get in order for the future films. Because like I said, there's 3 more movies to come, and this movie feels like we're just getting this all set up for the movies to come, but this movie itself isn't really doing much to make it its own film. Like the first film was introducing the core 4, Newt, Queenie, Jacob, and Tina, and basically the world that we are in at this time, where this movie, honestly, it's all about who Credence is. Grindelwald's there, but he's not a huge focal point. Dumbledore's there, he's not a huge focal point. The core 4 are there. I mean, they're a focal point, but they're not really given much to do. It's a lot of it just is getting things put into motion and in place for the next films. And that's where kind of this movie fails, is that it doesn't stand out on its own. It's not something that you'll probably want to go back and just randomly watch like a lot of people would do with certain Harry Potter movies. It's one of those that's just rather skippable. I mean, you gotta watch it in terms of like getting yourself ready through this franchise, so that way you know what's going on. But like after the franchise is over, it's not gonna be one of those that you're gonna go back and go, I want to watch that. It's just not, and that sucks, because I was really excited for this movie, and I mean, while there is some enjoyable parts, it's kind of just a lot of like studying for a test and getting ready for what's to come and not being fun in the moment. And it doesn't really have the heart that the first film had. Like I said, the core 4, they don't get much to do, but the main thing too is that none of them are on screen together at the same time at all in this movie. I mean, you get 2 or 3 together at most, but never once in this film are all 4 sharing the screen at the same time together. I mean, there's a point at the end of the movie where they're all in this big room, but they're spread out throughout that entire room. They're not together. So never once in this entire film are the main 4 characters of Newt, Tina, Queenie, and Jacob ever together at one point. And that's a pretty big blow, or it's a pretty big negative in terms of these movies, because you had us fall in love with these characters, their bond has been together, and you don't give us that in this movie at all. You basically are just throwing them in because we know them from the first film, but you could probably take them out, and the movie would probably still be able to do what it's doing in this film, and you would be okay with it, which, that's not a good thing. You don't build the main characters that you've got here and then not do anything with them. I mean, they're going to stick around, so you hope that they're going to get more to do in the third film. Obviously, Dumbledore and Grindelwald are going to get more to do. Credence, like I said, he's going to get a lot more to do. So here's hoping that Ezra Miller puts more into the character compared to what he's done for the first 2 films. Because I mean, at the end of the movie, a big thing's dropped, and it's one of those things where it's like they give us a big twist at the end of the movie that you know is going to be huge, but up to that point, it just doesn't feel earned at all. It's just like, okay, you told us this is huge. This is clearly a huge point, but if you hadn't have told me, I don't feel like I would have, believed it, if that makes any sense at all. Overall, like I said, you're Potter fans, you're still going to enjoy it. I mean, it's a Potter movie. I mean, you love the world of Harry Potter. You're going to enjoy the wizards. You're going to enjoy all the stuff it brings, but it's just kind of like popcorn. You're eating it, you're stuffing your face while watching the movie, but afterwards you just kind of feel empty. And that's a real bummer because the movie is supposed to be really good, but it's just really not. It's a must-watch for the people of the franchise, but it's not a must-watch for Potter fans that are going to really just delve in and love the movie. And that's basically it in a nutshell. Decent, not great. Rewatchability is relatively little unless you're just a diehard Potter fan. You're gonna watch it 1,000 times anyway. But for the average watcher, it's not something you need to really go rush out right now and see it, and that's kind of the big overall score of it. I'm not a big score giver. I'm not going to go it's 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 4 out of 10, because that can vary depending on the movie. My thing is like, is it something you need to go see right now? Potter fans, yes. Non-Potter fans, no. Regular Potter fans, I mean, you're going to want to see it, but is it something you need to go out and see right now, or no? You can probably just wait until it becomes, streaming, and you'll be okay. It's not something you have to rush out to see. There are better movies coming out or out right now that are going to do a lot better for you, or that you're going to enjoy probably a lot more, and that's kind of the bottom line when it comes to the Crimes of Grindelwald. But that basically covers it. Thanks for watching the first episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys come back for more. Like I said, hit that like, share, subscribe button. Don't forget to comment. And we'll see you next time. And most importantly, in case I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.